The lights are blinding, the stage is set, and your audience waits in complete silence, hanging on every word you're about to sing. You take a deep breath, the music starts, and you step into the moment you've worked your entire life for. But just as you're about to hit that powerful note, your mic dies. Silence. In that moment, everything you've worked for, everything you've dreamed of, could fall apart. The crowd's energy shifts, their excitement hangs in the air, but there's nothing you can do. You look down at the broken mic, your fingers trembling, your heart racing. You feel the weight of every second tick by, the dream slipping further away with every passing moment. But then, something miraculous happens. A voice, one you never expected, rises from the crowd. It's not the sound you thought would fill the silence, it's not the voice of a backup singer, a band member, or even someone you know. It's a stranger, someone you've never met before, yet their voice fills the void left by your broken mic. That stranger picks up your song, finishes it, and in doing so, creates a moment that no one will ever forget. What do you do when your moment, your big break, threatens to fall apart in an instant? Do you freeze, giving up on the performance, or do you roll with the punches, trusting that fate might just deliver something even more powerful than you had imagined? That's exactly what happened to our singer tonight, and trust me, the outcome will leave you speechless. You're going to want to stick around for this one because by the end of this story, you'll understand why some things in life, no matter how devastating they seem at first, might actually be a blessing in disguise. But let's take it from the top. It was a warm summer night in the heart of downtown, the type of evening where the air hums with anticipation. The music scene was alive and vibrant, buzzing with the energy of 1,000 voices. For weeks, our singer had rehearsed for this night, for this one shot, a chance to perform at one of the most prestigious live shows in the city. Fans from all over had gathered, the crowd swelling with excitement as the show progressed. But it wasn't just any show. It was a turning point for her, the moment that could change everything. This could be the night that launches her career. The night where she proves to the world that she has what it takes. And she was ready. Or at least, that's what she thought. The crowd erupted into applause as she stepped onto the stage. The lights hit her just right, casting a glow that made her feel like she was stepping into a dream. For a second, she could almost hear the echoes of her dreams, calling her forward. She could see herself on bigger stages, in front of more people, her music playing on the airwaves. But just as the first notes of the song started to play, something went terribly wrong. A crackling sound, followed by the unmistakable silence of a broken microphone. In that instant, time seemed to stand still. She looked at the mic, feeling the panic rising in her chest. This was her moment. Her chance. And it was slipping away. Her hands gripped the mic stand, a mix of confusion and frustration washing over her. She tried to stay calm, but the audience could sense the tension. They were waiting for her to do something, anything, to fix the situation. But what could she do? The sound guy was frantically working behind the scenes, trying to troubleshoot the problem, but the minutes ticked by and nothing happened. The spotlight felt heavier with every passing second. But then, out of nowhere, a voice boomed from the crowd. It wasn't loud or intrusive, no, it was a voice that carried effortlessly, as if it was meant to be heard. The person who spoke wasn't on the stage. They weren't a part of the show, yet their voice filled the air in a way that no one expected. Everyone turned their heads. The singer's eyes widened in shock. This stranger, this mysterious voice, was finishing her song. It was clear this wasn't some pre-arranged gimmick. The stranger didn't have the mic, didn't have a headset, and wasn't in the spotlight, yet somehow, their voice filled the space, harmonizing with the music. The crowd was stunned, at first unsure of what was happening. But then, they started to cheer, slowly at first, and then more loudly, as if they were witnessing something extraordinary. The energy in the room shifted. What had started as an awkward, tense moment suddenly became something raw and electric. But here's where things get interesting. Why did this stranger know the song? How did they know exactly when to step in and take over? And more importantly, who were they? The singer had never seen them before. Were they a random audience member? A part of the band she hadn't noticed? Or was something else at play here? Was this some kind of coincidence, or was it a moment of destiny? There's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand the deeper connections at work, connections that no one could have predicted. You won't believe how this chance encounter changed everything for the singer. The answer to the mystery will leave you questioning what fate really means, and how sometimes, just sometimes, the most unexpected people can step into our lives at the exact right moment. So, what happens next? What does this stranger do once the MIC is fixed? How does the singer react? Does she continue with the performance or does she stop, letting the stranger finish her song? And how does the crowd respond to this shocking turn of events? Stick around because the story only gets crazier from here. You're going to want to hear how this incredible moment unfolded. It's one that might just change how you look at fate, music, and those unexpected moments that alter our lives in ways we can't always predict. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss the unbelievable twists that come next. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be telling everyone you know about the night when a broken MIC led to an unforgettable musical moment. The night had started like any other for MIA. She wasn't new to the music scene, but every performance still held that weight of possibility, that sweet uncertainty. MIA had been singing since she was a little girl, long before she could ever imagine being on a stage like this. Growing up in a small town, the idea of making it big seemed like a distant dream, something far out of reach. But over the years, she had clawed her way through every small gig, every local bar, every cafe, where she could pour out her soul for just a handful of people. And for a while, it was enough. The struggle, the small victories, the late nights practicing, the rejection after rejection, MIA learned to embrace the grind. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't easy, but it was all she knew. But now, things had started to change. She could feel it in the air, that shift. 4 months, she'd been building up to this night, this big performance that could launch her career into something bigger. She'd recently signed with a small indie label, and they were hoping this live show could be the breakthrough they'd all been waiting for. MIA had spent the past few weeks obsessively perfecting every note, every lyric, every step on that stage. It wasn't just another performance for her, it was her moment. She had everything riding on it, and the pressure was unbearable. And yet, even though MIA had worked so hard to get to this point, there were moments when doubts crept in. She had always been the kind of person to second-guess herself, even when everything seemed to be going right. Her social media following had grown steadily over the past year, and the fans seemed to be rooting for her, but was it enough? Was she enough? Then there were the whispers. You know the ones. The ones that circulate when someone starts getting attention. People were starting to talk about MIA in the industry. Some said she was the next big thing. Others, though, were less sure. MIA had caught wind of some conversations backstage at events, rumors about her rising popularity that left her feeling uneasy. Was it her voice that was getting attention? Or was it something else? Was it just her appearance? Was her success only a product of the right timing, or was there something deeper going on? It gnawed at her. These thoughts were constantly in her head as she prepared for her big night. But she couldn't dwell on them. She had a show to perform, and that was all that mattered. On the day of the performance, everything seemed to be working out perfectly, at least, on the surface. MIA had done her soundcheck hours before the show, the band was ready, the stage was set, and the atmosphere was charged with excitement. Her manager, Yanel, had been all over the place, coordinating last-minute details and trying to keep things running smoothly. But even with all the preparation, there was something strange about the way the night felt. MIA couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was a lingering sense of unease in the air, as if something was about to go wrong, though she didn't know what. And then there was the stranger. She had noticed him earlier in the night, standing in the back of the crowd, his dark eyes hidden under the brim of a hat, his face mostly obscured by shadows. He didn't seem to fit the usual crowd at these kinds of events. MIA had seen her regular fans before, the ones who followed her on Instagram, the ones who showed up to her live shows with signs and t-shirts. But this guy wasn't one of them. There was something unsettling about him, but MIA didn't think too much about it at the time. After all, this was her big night, and there was no room for distractions. But as the show went on, MIA couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, really watching her. It was like his eyes were locked onto her, following her every move. She stole a glance at him from the stage and saw him standing there again, staring straight at her with an intensity that made her stomach churn. She had never seen him before, yet there was something familiar about him, something she couldn't place. Maybe it was the way he stood so still, or the way his lips seemed to twitch as if he was ready to speak at any moment. But then, her focus shifted back to the music, back to the rhythm. She couldn't afford to get distracted, not now. The show had progressed without incident, and MIA was in the zone. The crowd was alive with energy, the kind of energy that every artist dreams of. She was singing her heart out, feeling the power of every note as it resonated through the room. But then, just as the song hit its peak, the MIC started acting up. A crackle, a buzz, and then complete silence. MIA froze. The band kept playing, but now it was all on her. The crowd's cheers quickly turned into murmurs. Mia's pulse spiked, her mind racing. For a moment, she felt completely exposed. She looked down at the MIC, trying to make sense of it. A part of her wanted to laugh it off, to joke with the audience, but she couldn't. Her heart was in her throat. This was it. This was the moment she had been working for, and now it was slipping away. And that's when it happened. The voice. At first, MIA thought she was imagining it. She had seen people try to join in at performances before, but this was different. This voice, clear and strong, was coming from somewhere in the crowd. Mia's eyes darted across the room, looking for the source. She didn't know why, but she felt a strange pull towards it. And then it clicked. It wasn't just any voice. This voice knew the lyrics. It wasn't a random audience member trying to have fun. This person was finishing her song, hitting all the notes she was supposed to sing, continuing the performance as if they had been rehearsing it alongside her all along. The mystery deepened. How could this person possibly know her song so well? How could they be so in tune with her performance? But just as quickly as the thought crossed her mind, the answer eluded her. The stranger's voice carried on, filling the space where her own voice had fallen silent. The crowd seemed just as mesmerized by the unexpected turn of events as MIA was. She watched, frozen, as the stranger seemed to take control of the moment. The voice was beautiful, captivating, almost too perfect to be random. But as Mia's mind raced to make sense of it, one question lingered above all else. Who was this person, and why did it feel like they were waiting for this exact moment? Was it a coincidence? Was it just a freak accident? Or was it something more? Something far more deliberate? Mia's heart raced as she stood frozen on the stage, watching the stranger finish her song. The crowd was electric, caught up in the unexpected turn of events, but MIA couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her gut. Who was this person? How did they know the lyrics? Why did it feel like they were stepping into her moment with an almost eerie sense of purpose? The performance continued, but Mia's mind was miles away, racing through 1,000 possibilities. She tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on the music, letting the rhythm guide her back into the performance. But the stranger's voice haunted her, echoing in her ears long after the song ended. After the show, MIA rushed backstage, hoping to process everything in private. The adrenaline of the night was starting to wear off, and with it, her questions grew louder. She had to know who the stranger was, how they knew her song, and why they had stepped in at that exact moment. But when she tried to talk to her manager, Yanel, about it, she was met with an unexpected response. Yanel was frantic, running around the backstage area, talking to the crew and making sure everything was packed up. She didn't even seem to notice MIA standing there, her face full of questions. When MIA finally caught her attention, she couldn't shake the sense that something was off. There was a tightness in Yanel's voice, a subtle unease that MIA hadn't noticed before. Yanel quickly dismissed the idea of investigating the stranger, brushing it off as a coincidence, a freak occurrence that didn't need to be revisited. "Let's not make a bigger deal out of this than it is, MIA," she said, a little too quickly, her eyes darting away. "We have bigger things to focus on right now, okay? Tonight was a success. You did amazing." But MIA wasn't convinced. There was something about the way Yanel spoke, almost as if she was hiding something. MIA pressed her, asking more about the stranger, trying to find any clue that could give her the answers she so desperately wanted. But every time she asked, Yanel seemed more distant, more guarded. Something wasn't right, and the more Mia thought about it, the more she felt like the walls were closing in around her. Why was Yanel so insistent on ignoring the mystery? Was there something more she knew? The next day, as Mia scrolled through her social media, the mystery only deepened. Fans were buzzing about the performance. But there was something strange about the comments. Some fans were thrilled by the unexpected twist, praising the stranger for stepping in and helping finish the song, calling it a magical moment of fate. Others, however, started to notice odd details, small inconsistencies that Mia hadn't seen at the time. Some mentioned how the stranger's voice didn't sound quite like a random person from the crowd, suggesting it might have been pre-planned or orchestrated. There was even a fan who posted a blurry image from the back of the crowd, showing a figure who appeared to be the stranger, but the image wasn't clear enough to make any conclusions. Mia was torn. She wanted to believe it was just an accident, a weird but harmless moment that happened to turn into something memorable. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was being hidden from her. The more she thought about it, the more questions piled up, and every time she tried to dig deeper, it felt like someone was actively pushing her away from the truth. A few days later, Mia received an unexpected visit. It was from Eric, a longtime acquaintance from the local music scene who had helped her in the past with some smaller gigs. He showed up at her apartment, unannounced, but his presence wasn't comforting, it was ominous. His usually friendly demeanor was replaced by a look of concern, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Eric didn't waste time getting to the point. Mia, you need to stop looking into this, he said, his voice low and urgent. The night you're asking about, the stranger, it's better if you just let it go. Mia was taken aback. She had never expected Eric to act this way. He'd always been supportive, always had her back. But now, his words hit her like a slap in the face. Why was he telling her to stop asking questions? What did he know that she didn't? Why are you so concerned, Eric? She asked, trying to mask the confusion in her voice. What's the big deal? It was just one weird moment in the middle of a show. But something feels off, and I need to know what happened. Please, just tell me what you know. Eric's face tightened, and for a second, Mia thought he might backpedal, maybe tell her it was all a misunderstanding. But instead, he took a step back, like he was weighing whether to reveal something he wasn't ready to say. Mia, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, you don't understand. There's a lot more going on here than you think. That stranger. They're not just a random fan. They've been connected to this industry for a long time. And I think you're better off staying away from it. Mia's mind was reeling. Eric's words didn't make sense. Why was he acting like this? Was there something sinister going on? Why had he warned her so strongly to drop the investigation? She stared at him, searching for answers in his eyes, but all she saw was fear. Before she could press him further, Eric turned abruptly, his eyes darting toward the door. Just trust me, Mia, he said, his voice tinged with an urgency she hadn't heard before. Let it go. And with that, he left. Mia stood there, her heart pounding in her chest, every instinct screaming that she was on the edge of uncovering something big. Something dangerous. But as the days went on, Mia's search for answers became even more difficult. Her phone started acting strange, her messages going unanswered, and a key piece of evidence, a video clip of the performance that might have had more clues, mysteriously disappeared from her phone, erased without a trace. It wasn't long before Mia realized that someone was actively trying to prevent her from digging deeper. But who? And why? Every lead she followed seemed to fizzle out. People who had been at the show suddenly couldn't remember the stranger. The video from the crowd, the one that had sparked so many theories, was nowhere to be found. It felt like the universe itself was conspiring to erase the truth. Mia couldn't ignore the mounting pressure. Someone, or something, didn't want her to uncover the truth. And the more she pushed, the more she realized that the answer might be closer than she thought. But at what cost? She was getting closer to something big, something that could shatter everything she knew about the industry and the people she thought she trusted. But was it worth it to keep digging? Mia's next move could change everything, but the question remained, was she ready to face the truth? As the days stretched on, The pressure on MIA continued to mount. Every step she took toward the truth felt like it only led to more confusion, more unanswered questions. With every dead end she reached, a new puzzle piece seemed to fall into place, but none of them fit together quite right. Her phone was still acting up, and the footage of the performance, which might have been her key to understanding the stranger's involvement, had vanished without a trace. She tried to stay focused on her music, hoping that the whirlwind of doubt and suspicion would eventually fade, but the nagging feeling in the back of her mind was relentless. Every text message left unanswered, every strange encounter she had backstage, added to the overwhelming sense that she was being watched. Someone was out there, monitoring her, pulling strings behind the scenes. But who? And why? It wasn't until a few days later, after MIA had let her guard down just a little, that the mystery took a darker turn. It wasn't just her anymore. It was someone close to her, someone who had been there since the beginning, supporting her in ways MIA had never fully understood until now. It was Yanel, her manager. She had been acting strange lately, more distant, as if she were hiding something. MIA had brushed it off, thinking maybe Yanel was just stressed, overwhelmed with the growing demands of their music career. But then, late one evening, as MIA was flipping through her emails, she received a message from an unknown number. The message was brief, cryptic, and ominous. "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." Mia's blood ran cold. She stared at the words, rereading them multiple times, trying to make sense of them. The message seemed to be directed at her, warning her to stop her search, just like Eric had done. But this time, it wasn't just a vague warning. This was personal. MIA felt like someone had just drawn a line in the sand, and if she crossed it, the consequences could be dire. She needed to know who had sent the message, but when she tried to trace the number, it came up as unregistered. Another dead end. At that moment, her thoughts immediately drifted to Yanel. Had she known about the threats MIA had received? Was she somehow involved in this strange web? After all, Yanel had been by her side through everything, handling her business deals, her press engagements, her everything. They had built this relationship over the years, and it felt solid, like an unbreakable bond. But the more MIA thought about it, the more she realized that there had always been something slightly off about Yanel's behavior. Whenever MIA pressed her on the mysterious stranger at the performance, Yanel would immediately shut it down, changing the subject or deflecting her questions. Was she protecting someone? Or was she simply trying to prevent MIA from discovering something that could jeopardize their careers? The tension between MIA and Yanel reached a boiling point when MIA confronted her directly. It wasn't planned, it just happened in the heat of the moment, driven by the paranoia that had started to consume her. "Yanel, what do you know about the stranger? Why are you so adamant that I drop this? And why is everyone telling me to stop looking?" MIA demanded, her voice strained with frustration. Yanel's response was not what MIA expected. Instead of brushing her off or deflecting, Yanel looked like she had just seen a ghost. Her face went pale, her eyes wide, and for a brief second, MIA could have sworn she saw something close to fear in her eyes. "MIA, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. There are things going on behind the scenes that you don't understand. Please, just let it go," Yanel pleaded, her voice trembling. Mia's stomach turned. She had always trusted Yanel. They had been through thick and thin together, and now, it felt like the foundation beneath their relationship was crumbling. There was something she wasn't being told, something that, for reasons MIA couldn't yet grasp, Yanel wasn't willing to share. Was it just fear? Or was there something more? Was Yanel involved in the mystery of the stranger? Was she hiding something about that night that MIA wasn't ready to face? As Mia's mind reeled from the confrontation, she received another unsettling piece of the puzzle. She was meeting with her publicist, Daniel, the next day, someone who had been working on expanding her brand and helping her navigate the complexities of her growing career. He had always been a source of support, offering advice and connections that helped her move forward. But when MIA sat down with him, the conversation quickly turned strange. Daniel was more reserved than usual, and when MIA asked him about the stranger, about the mysterious person who had stepped in and finished her song, he responded with an unexpected intensity. "MIA, Daniel said, his voice low, you have to be careful. There are people involved in this industry who don't take kindly to people poking around in their business. Some things are better left untouched, especially when it comes to the bigger players. If you want to stay in this game, you need to keep your head down and your focus on your music. Trust me, it's for your own good. The words sent a chill down Mia's spine. She had never heard Daniel speak this way before. The way he looked at her, the way he leaned in, it felt like a warning wrapped in a threat. Was he trying to protect her, or was he part of the problem? Why was he so invested in making her back off from the investigation? Mia's gut told her something was wrong, but she wasn't sure what to do with the information. Could Daniel be another pawn in a larger game? Or was he trying to shield her from something dangerous? And why did he seem so frightened? With each passing day, the web of mystery around the stranger, the message, and the strange behavior of the people around her seemed to grow tighter. Mia's trust in the people she thought she knew was starting to crumble, and the questions kept piling up. What was the truth behind that night? Why was someone so desperate to keep her from uncovering it? And most importantly, what had happened in the past that was making so many people so afraid to speak? In a desperate attempt to get to the bottom of it all, Mia started digging into her own past, looking for connections she might have missed. She traced old contacts, checked her past performances, revisited moments from her career she thought were long gone. But every time she thought she was getting close to something, it slipped away like sand through her fingers. She was getting closer, she could feel it, but the deeper she dug, the more pieces of her life and career seemed to disappear, vanishing, just like the video, just like the mysterious stranger's identity. And then, in the dead of night, a final message appeared on her phone. It was from an unknown number, but this time, it was different. The message was short, but it hit Mia like a punch to the gut. Stop looking. Or you'll wish you hadn't. Mia's heart stopped. The stakes were higher than ever, and now, the people closest to her, the ones she had trusted the most, were hiding something, and it was clear they would go to any length to keep her from the truth. But the question remained, was Mia ready to face whatever lay at the end of this twisted trail? Would she uncover the truth, no matter the cost? Or would she find herself trapped in a dangerous game, one she might not be able to escape? The danger was real, and Mia knew she was running out of time. Mia's mind had been unraveling for days, each piece of the puzzle slipping further out of reach as she pushed deeper into the mystery. The strange messages, the cold warnings, the unsettling behavior from the people she trusted most, it all added up to one undeniable truth: something was wrong, and it was only getting worse. But it wasn't until that night, the night everything changed, that Mia finally realized just how far into the danger she had fallen. It started with a feeling. One that gnawed at her insides and refused to be ignored. She had just finished a late-night rehearsal at the studio, the echo of her own voice still hanging in the air, but the usual peace of the space had been replaced with an unnerving sense of emptiness. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, tracking her every move. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she packed her things, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. It was as if the walls were closing in on her, the silence in the studio growing louder, more suffocating. As she stepped outside into the cool night air, Mia's unease deepened. The city was still alive, but it felt different, quieter somehow, like a predator waiting to pounce. She glanced around, the streets lit by the dull glow of streetlights, but there was no one in sight. No cars. No pedestrians. Just the low hum of the city that should have felt familiar, but instead felt foreign and threatening. She started to walk toward her car, the echo of her footsteps louder than usual on the empty street. That's when she saw him, a figure standing just beneath the shadow of a nearby alley, his face hidden beneath the brim of a hat. At first, Mia thought it was just her paranoia, but then, he moved. Slowly, deliberately, stepping out into the street, his gaze locked on her with an intensity that made her blood run cold. Her heart raced as she quickened her pace, her steps turning into a near run as she fumbled for her keys. The sound of her breathing was louder now, almost deafening in her ears. She didn't look back, but the feeling of being hunted, of someone closing in on her, was undeniable. By the time she reached her car and locked herself inside, she was shaking, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked around once more, the figure was gone, vanished into the darkness like he had never been there. But MIA knew better. He had been there, and he had been watching her. The creeping feeling of dread didn't leave her as she drove home, the silence in the car pressing in around her. Every shadow, every flicker of movement outside her window felt like a threat, a potential danger. By the time she reached her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't safe anymore. And that's when the real terror began. It was 2 a.m. when she received the call. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, the ringtone jarring in the silence of the room. MIA answered it without thinking, her voice shaking. MIA, the voice on the other end was familiar, Yanel's voice. But it sounded strained, panicked. "You need to listen to me. You're in danger. They're coming for you." Mia's pulse spiked, her mind racing with questions. "What do you mean? Who's coming for me? What's going on, Yanel?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, a deep breath before Yanel spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't say much right now, but you need to leave. Right now. Don't trust anyone, not even me. You've already gone too far. If you keep looking, they'll make sure you never get the answers you're searching for. You're not safe, MIA. Get out while you still can." The line went dead. MIA sat there, frozen, the phone pressed to her ear, the empty silence on the other end of the line the only thing that made any noise. The message was clear and terrifying. She wasn't just dealing with someone trying to mess with her career anymore. This was something darker. Something more dangerous. But Yanel's cryptic warning only left her with more questions. Who was they? Why was Yanel so scared? Had she known all along what MIA was getting into? Was she in on it? Or was she trying to protect her? The next few hours were a blur. MIA couldn't sleep. Her mind was too full, too frantic with the possibilities. Her apartment suddenly felt like a prison, the walls too close, the silence too suffocating. She kept checking her phone, looking for some kind of explanation, but the messages from Yanel weren't coming through. No one was answering her calls. Everyone was either silent or avoiding her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that someone, somewhere, had flipped a switch, and now MIA was in their sights. But who? And why? When the sun finally rose, the world outside seemed unchanged, but MIA knew that everything had changed. The threat wasn't just a vague warning anymore. It was real. And that's when it happened. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, it wasn't a message. It was a video. The notification didn't show who it was from, just a random string of numbers and letters, but Mia's heart dropped into her stomach as she tapped the screen. The video started to play, and her eyes widened in shock. It was footage from the night of the performance. But this wasn't the footage she had seen before. It was different. This video was from a different angle, taken from behind the stage. The stranger who had finished her song was in the frame, but there was something even more chilling about this footage. The camera zoomed in on the figure in the crowd, and there, in the background, was someone MIA recognized. It was Yanel. She was talking to someone just out of view of the camera, her posture tense, her expression unreadable. It was quick, just a few seconds, but it was enough. Enough to confirm that something wasn't right. As MIA watched the video, her mind raced. Yanel's involvement in this was more than just a passing connection. She had been there that night, and now, she was part of this web, part of whatever had been going on behind the scenes. But why hadn't Yanel told her? Why hadn't anyone told her the truth? Before MIA could gather her thoughts, the video ended abruptly. The screen flashed once, and a new message appeared, this one even more ominous than the last. "You're asking too many questions, MIA. This is your last warning. Stop. Or you'll never see the light of day again." Panic surged through Mia's veins. She wasn't just being watched. She was being threatened. The person behind all of this wasn't playing games anymore. This wasn't just about ruining her career. They were willing to go much further to silence her. MIA didn't know who they were, or how they had gotten so close, but it was clear that the stakes had just been raised to a terrifying new level. She couldn't stay in her apartment. She couldn't stay anywhere. As she paced the room, the walls closing in around her, MIA realized something she had been too afraid to admit: they were always one step ahead. And now, she was running out of time to figure out who they were before it was too late. The fear she felt was palpable now, heavy in her chest, and she knew she was in serious danger. But who could she trust? Everyone around her seemed to be hiding something, from Yanel to Daniel, to the mysterious stranger, to the cryptic warnings that kept coming her way. And as MIA started to gather her things, preparing to flee, one thought lingered in her mind: who would be the next to disappear? MIA sat in her car, the engine running but her mind a million miles away. The streets outside were empty, the air too still for a city that was supposed to be alive with energy. She glanced at her phone once more, half expecting another ominous message, another cryptic warning, but this time, nothing came. The silence was almost suffocating. Her phone had been blowing up all night, each message more disturbing than the last, but now it seemed like the calm before the storm. She couldn't keep running, though. There were too many unanswered questions gnawing at her. Too many things that didn't make sense. She had to keep pushing forward, even if she didn't know who, or what, was really behind all of this. The last video had shaken her to her core, but there was something in it, something small and easily overlooked, that she couldn't stop thinking about. In the footage, she had seen Yanel, sure, but it wasn't just her conversation in the background that caught Mia's attention. It was the other person in the frame, someone MIA hadn't noticed before. A man, just a shadow, his face obscured. But as MIA rewatched the footage over and over, a tiny detail became clearer: the man was holding something. A symbol. A ring, perhaps, or a pendant, something familiar. Mia's heart skipped a beat when she realized what it was. The symbol looked eerily similar to one she had seen before, years ago, in an old photo of her late father. It was a family crest. She hadn't thought about it in ages. The memory had been buried beneath years of grief and ambition, but now it all came rushing back. Her father had been a well-known musician, a pioneer in his field, and his death had left behind more questions than answers. She never fully understood the extent of his connections, or why his sudden death had been so shrouded in mystery. Everyone had whispered about it, but no one ever really talked about the details. But now, as MIA stared at the blurry figure in the video, everything clicked. The symbol, the one from her father's past, was part of a hidden world she had no idea existed, one that was far darker than anything she had ever imagined. She needed to know more. She had to get to the bottom of this. And so, she drove. Without a plan, without any certainty about where she was going, but with a deep, undeniable need to uncover the truth. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and fears, and her fingers trembled on the steering wheel as she thought about the danger closing in around her. But she couldn't stop now. The truth was out there, and it had been staring her in the face all along. It wasn't long before MIA found herself outside an unassuming building on the outskirts of town. It looked like nothing more than an old, abandoned warehouse. But the moment her eyes landed on it, something deep inside her clicked. She had been here before. Years ago, when she was a child, her father had taken her to this very spot. He had told her it was for a special project, something that was important to him, but she had been too young to understand. Now, standing outside the same building, it felt like the past and present were colliding. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the picture they were forming was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Before she could make a move, the sound of footsteps echoed in the darkness, and a figure stepped out from the shadows. MIA froze. It was Yanel. Her heart raced, a mix of relief and fear flooding her chest. "Yanel, what's going on? What is all of this?" MIA demanded, the questions tumbling out in a frantic rush. But Yanel's face, which had always been a source of comfort and assurance, was now a mask of something different. Something unreadable. She didn't look like the same person MIA had known. "MIA, there's so much I need to explain," Yanel said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. But there was something in her eyes now, a darkness MIA had never seen before, a shadow that told her this conversation wasn't going to be what she expected. "But you need to understand that this isn't just about you. It never was." Mia's stomach dropped. "What do you mean? What's been going on? Who is this stranger? Why are they messing with my life?" Yanel hesitated, her eyes flickering to the building behind them. "The stranger, the one who finished your song," she started, then paused, as if weighing her words carefully. "He wasn't just anyone, MIA. He's connected to your father. To your family's past. The symbol you saw in the video? That's part of it too. It's all connected, MIA. This is bigger than you think. Mia's mind spun as she tried to process her manager's words. Connected to my father? The man in the video, the symbol, Yanel's cryptic warnings, it was all pointing toward something her father had been involved in, something hidden in the shadows of his legacy. But why hadn't Yanel told her any of this before? Why keep her in the dark all this time? MIA, Yanel continued, her voice thick with emotion, I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought you'd be better off without knowing the truth. But the truth is, your father wasn't just a musician. He was part of something much larger, a secret organization. They were involved in things that were beyond the music industry, things that could ruin everything if they were ever exposed. And your father, he was planning to leave it all behind. But then, he was silenced. And now, it's your turn. The words hit MIA like a ton of bricks. Her father wasn't just a musician. He was part of something bigger. The realization was dizzying. It was hard to believe, but everything Yanel was saying lined up with the strange occurrences MIA had been experiencing, the threats, the warnings, the mysterious stranger. They weren't just trying to ruin her career. They were trying to protect something much darker, something her father had left behind. Wait, MIA gasped, trying to wrap her head around what Yanel was saying. You knew about this. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you warn me? Yanel's eyes darkened, and she took a step back, her gaze flickering to the warehouse again. Because if I had, MIA, you would have never been safe. And the truth could destroy everything. People in this world don't play by the same rules. You've been digging up things that you weren't meant to uncover, and now, you're too far in. You don't know who you're up against. It was in that moment, as Yanel's words sank in, that MIA finally understood. She wasn't just being targeted by some random stranger. This wasn't some petty revenge or corporate sabotage. This was about something much bigger than she had ever imagined, something tied to her father's mysterious past and her own future. As Yanel turned to walk away, MIA felt a wave of panic rush through her, but she couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The truth was far more horrifying than she had ever anticipated. And then, just as Yanel was about to disappear into the darkness, she stopped and turned back one last time. Her eyes were filled with a strange mix of guilt and determination. You need to leave. Don't come back to this place. Don't trust anyone, she warned, her voice low and shaking. Not even me. The weight of her words hung in the air, and MIA realized with a cold shiver that she had been a pawn in a much larger game. A game that had been playing out for years, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and deception. As she stood there in the night, watching Yanel disappear into the shadows, MIA felt the walls closing in around her. The danger wasn't just looming anymore. It was here. And it was far too late to walk away now. MIA stood at the edge of the parking lot, her car still idling as the adrenaline from the conversation with Yanel began to wear off. Her mind was spinning, the weight of the new information crashing down on her like a wave she couldn't escape. Her father wasn't just a musician, he was a part of something far more dangerous than she had ever realized, and now, it was all coming for her. She had spent so long trying to uncover the truth, but she hadn't fully grasped what that would mean. The deeper she dug, the more she discovered about her father's secret world, and now, the deeper she was in. Yanel's warning still echoed in her head, you don't know who you're up against. It wasn't just a cryptic message anymore. It was a reality. A truth she couldn't ignore. But how could she turn back? How could she just walk away now, knowing how close she was to uncovering everything? Her thoughts were interrupted by the buzz of her phone. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number, another cryptic text, one that seemed to grow more threatening by the second. You're digging in the wrong places, MIA. Stop now, or the consequences will be worse than you could ever imagine. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. It wasn't just an anonymous threat. It was personal. Whoever this was, they knew exactly what she was after. They knew she wasn't going to stop. And they were willing to make her pay for it. But the worst part was that MIA didn't know who they were. She didn't know who to trust. Was Yanel really trying to protect her, or had she been a part of this secret world all along? Her thoughts raced as she turned off the engine and stepped out of the car, the cold night air biting at her skin. The city around her was quiet, too quiet, as though holding its breath. She couldn't keep running, not anymore. But what was she supposed to do? What choices did she even have? Every door she opened seemed to lead her deeper into the unknown, further into danger. The stakes were higher now, the consequences more severe, and Mia knew she couldn't do this alone. She needed help. But who could she trust? Her thoughts turned to Daniel. The one person who had always been there for her, the one person she believed in without question. She had kept him in the dark about everything, sure, but they had been close once. He had always been her safe haven, her anchor in a world that sometimes felt like it was spinning out of control. But now, with everything that was happening, she wasn't so sure. Daniel had always known more about the industry than anyone else. He had been there, alongside her father in the early days. But what if he knew more than he had let on? What if he was involved in whatever dark world her father had been a part of? What if he knew more about her father's death than he had ever told her? Mia knew she couldn't keep hiding from the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She had to confront him. She had to ask him about everything, about the secret life her father had led, about the cryptic messages, the strange warnings, the symbol in the video. And she had to ask him why he had never told her any of it. But as she drove to his apartment, her chest tightened with fear. What if he was involved? What if she couldn't trust him? Would he even admit the truth if she confronted him? When she arrived at Daniel's place, it was late, and the apartment complex was eerily quiet. The only light was the dim glow of a street lamp outside his window. Mia knocked, her heart racing in her chest as she waited for him to answer. When the door finally opened, she was struck by how different he looked. He had always been the calm, composed one, but tonight his face was tight, his eyes dark with worry. Mia, what are you doing here? Daniel asked, his voice soft but edged with something she couldn't quite place. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you know something about this. About my father. About everything that's happening. Daniel's expression faltered for a split second, but he quickly masked it with a forced smile. What are you talking about? I'm not stupid, Daniel, she said, the anger rising in her chest now. I've been getting these messages, these threats. And I know it has something to do with my father. You were close to him, and you're close to me. So why haven't you told me anything? Why did you keep all of this from me? He stepped back, running a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with something. Mia, I didn't want to get you involved in this. It's too dangerous. I thought I could protect you, but this isn't something I can control. Control? Mia's voice shook with frustration. I've been in the dark this whole time, Daniel. I don't need you to protect me. I need you to tell me the truth. What aren't you telling me? Daniel took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had just fallen on him. He looked at her, his eyes filled with regret and something else, something darker. I didn't want you to get dragged into this, Mia. Your father wasn't just a musician. He was involved in something bigger than we both realized. And it's too dangerous for you to keep digging. You don't know who you're dealing with. Her heart pounded in her chest. Who am I dealing with, Daniel? He didn't answer right away, and that's when Mia realized something that shook her to her core. The look in his eyes wasn't just fear. It was guilt. He knew more. He had always known more. But why hadn't he told her? Was he protecting her, or was he trying to hide something from her? Mia, you have to stop, Daniel said, his voice low and urgent. They won't stop until you do. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about your family. It's about everything your father was involved in. I don't know how much longer we have before. Before what? Before they came for her. Before the truth came crashing down on her in a way that couldn't be undone. Mia's mind raced with questions, but there was one that stood out above the rest. Could she trust Daniel? And just as she opened her mouth to demand answers, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, but the screen went black before she could read the message. A sudden noise from outside the door startled her, and before she could react, Daniel's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. Get out, he whispered urgently. Now. The look in his eyes said it all. Something was coming. Something that would change everything. Mia's pulse raced as she pulled away from him, heart hammering in her chest. What's going on, Daniel? What's happening? I don't have time to explain. Just trust me. They're coming for you, MIA. You need to leave now. The door behind them creaked open, and Mia's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Daniel, the one person she thought she could always count on, was hiding something. Yanel's warning echoed in her mind. You're too far in. MIA was standing at the edge of a precipice, and the only way out was into a world that might swallow her whole. Do you trust me? Daniel's voice was low, filled with an intensity MIA had never heard before. MIA didn't know what to say. How could she trust anyone now? Do you trust me? He repeated. And in that moment, as the shadows grew darker and the weight of impossible choices pressed down on her, MIA realized that trust had become the most dangerous thing of all. Mia's pulse thundered in her ears as she sprinted down the narrow hallway of Daniel's apartment building, the sound of footsteps behind her growing louder. She didn't have to look back to know someone was coming for her. She could feel the weight of it, the certainty that everything was spiraling out of control faster than she could process. Daniel had grabbed her, pulled her out of the apartment, and rushed her down the stairwell without a word, his grip tight on her arm, his face pale, eyes wide with something she couldn't place. Now, the night was closing in, and every street corner felt like a trap. Every shadow seemed to be hiding something or someone, waiting to spring out of the darkness and swallow her whole. They had no time. No time to think. No time to breathe. As they burst out into the parking lot, Mia's mind raced through 100 possibilities, none of which made sense. She had thought she could trust Daniel. She had thought he was the one person who would never let her down. But now, standing in the cold night air with his grip still firm around her wrist, she wasn't so sure anymore. Where are we going? She gasped, her voice barely a whisper as she pulled free from his grasp. She had to know. What the hell was happening? Daniel didn't answer immediately, his eyes darting around the lot, his shoulders tense, as if expecting someone or something to show up at any moment. Get in the car, he said, his voice strained, and for a moment, MIA saw something in him she had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. I need answers, Daniel, she shot back, her voice shaking with a mix of frustration and panic. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me? He turned sharply, grabbing her by the shoulders, his eyes filled with urgency. MIA, I did try to warn you. But you don't understand what's at stake. This is bigger than just you. It's bigger than your father. His words were cut off by the distant sound of screeching tires, the rapid approach of something MIA couldn't yet see, but could feel closing in fast. Without another word, Daniel shoved her into the car and slammed the door shut. The engine roared to life as he sped out of the parking lot, his knuckles white on the wheel. The streets blurred outside the windows, and Mia's head spun. She was just starting to make sense of what Daniel had been saying when her phone buzzed again, an unknown number flashing on the screen. But she couldn't think about that now. Not with everything else falling apart. Who's after us? She demanded, the words coming out more as a panicked plea than a demand for an answer. It's not who you think it is, Daniel muttered, his eyes flicking toward the rearview mirror. His hands gripped the wheel tighter as he accelerated. You've been digging too deep, MIA. You've exposed things you shouldn't have. The people behind this, behind your father's death, they don't just have power. They have connections everywhere. Mia's mind raced. Connections everywhere. That wasn't just some shadowy criminal network she had imagined. This was bigger. A multi-layered conspiracy that had been watching her from the start, carefully pulling strings, manipulating every piece of her life. She hadn't just uncovered a few shady dealings. She had stumbled onto the skeleton of an entire underground world, a world her father had been part of, a world that still lingered in the shadows. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded again, the sting of betrayal sharp in her voice. She had trusted Daniel. She had trusted him with everything. I couldn't, Daniel said, his voice tight with something that sounded almost like regret. You don't understand, MIA. The people involved in this. They've been operating for decades. Your father was just one part of it. But he was planning to leave it. He wanted out, and he was trying to protect you by keeping you away from all of this. But you kept asking questions. You pushed too far, and now they're coming for you. Mia's thoughts spun like a whirlwind. They're coming for me. It wasn't just some random threat anymore. It wasn't some anonymous stranger. The people behind this weren't afraid to take action. They had eyes everywhere. Why didn't you just tell me? She whispered, her voice breaking with frustration. Why keep me in the dark? Daniel's jaw clenched. Because if I told you, MIA, you would have been a target too. They don't just kill people. They ruin their lives. They destroy everything they love, everything they care about. His gaze was hard now, his voice cold. And I couldn't let that happen to you. It was then that MIA realized the extent of it. The danger wasn't just hanging over her like a cloud anymore. It was suffocating, crawling closer, closing in like a vice. But there was more. Something Daniel wasn't saying. How many people are involved in this? MIA asked, her throat dry. Too many, Daniel replied grimly. People you know. People you trust. The words hung in the air, too heavy to ignore. Mia's mind flashed back to everyone she had crossed paths with in the past few weeks, everyone who had seemed like a friend, a confidant, someone she could count on. Yanel. Daniel. Hell, even the stranger who had finished her song, had he been part of it all along? And then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed once more, but this time it wasn't just a message. It was a call. MIA hesitated, her heart thudding in her chest. The name on the screen was one she hadn't expected to see. Yanel. Her hands trembled as she answered, the urgency in the call echoing in her ear. MIA, listen to me. You need to get out of town. Now. Yanel's voice was frantic, breathless. I've seen them. They're coming for you. They know you're onto them. They know everything. What are you talking about? MIA asked, panic creeping into her voice. What's happening? Who's coming for me? Don't trust Daniel. Yanel's voice crackled with static, but the words were clear. He's not who he says he is. He's been working with them the whole time. He's been lying to you, MIA. He's been playing you. The phone went dead. Mia's world spun, and for a moment, everything went silent. She turned to Daniel, her chest tight with disbelief, her eyes wide as she searched his face for any sign of truth, any sign that what Yanel had just said was a lie. Is it true? She whispered. Are you working with them? Daniel's eyes flicked to hers, and for a long moment, he didn't say a word. His silence spoke louder than any confession ever could. And in that instant, MIA realized the truth, the horrifying, terrible truth. Daniel had never been on her side. He had always been playing a part in this game, pulling strings behind the scenes, keeping her close enough to manipulate but far enough away to protect himself. He had known everything all along, and he had been lying to her, using her, and she had never seen it. The trust she had placed in him, the one person she thought she could always rely on, was shattered in a heartbeat. Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of it sank in. The stakes were higher now. There was no turning back. You've been lying to me this whole time, she said, her voice shaking with a mix of betrayal and fury. MIA, Daniel began, but she cut him off. No more lies, she snapped, her voice cold and cutting. You were never my friend. You were never on my side. You were just another part of this damn conspiracy. The car screeched as Daniel slammed on the brakes, the tires spinning as they came to a halt. They were no longer alone. Someone was out there, watching them. The danger had finally caught up with them. MIA had reached the point of no return. The truth was ugly, and the people who had been pulling the strings had finally shown their hand. And now, MIA was about to face the ultimate choice. Would she fight to the end, or would she be swallowed by the darkness that had consumed everything she thought she knew? The answer was becoming clearer by the second, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as MIA stepped into the abandoned warehouse. The dim light flickered overhead, casting long, sharp shadows across the cracked concrete floor. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat growing louder, faster. She had followed the breadcrumbs, the mysterious phone calls, the hidden messages, the warnings from people she thought she could trust. Every piece of the puzzle had led her here, to this moment. She had uncovered the truth about her father, about the conspiracy that had ensnared him and now, had swallowed her whole. But there was one thing left she needed to know, one thing that had haunted her from the very start. Who was behind all of this? The silence of the warehouse pressed in on her as she moved cautiously through the space, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. And in that instant, Mia realized the truth, the horrifying, terrible truth. Daniel had never been on her side. He had always been playing a part in this game, pulling strings behind the scenes, keeping her close enough to manipulate but far enough away to protect himself. He had known everything all along, and he had been lying to her, using her, and she had never seen it. The trust she had placed in him, the one person she thought she could always rely on, was shattered in a heartbeat. Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of it sank in. The stakes were higher now. There was no turning back. "You've been lying to me this whole time," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of betrayal and fury. "Mia," Daniel began, but she cut him off. "No more lies," she snapped, her voice cold and cutting. "You were never my friend. You were never on my side. You were just another part of this damn conspiracy." The car screeched as Daniel slammed on the brakes, the tires spinning as they came to a halt. They were no longer alone. Someone was out there, watching them. The danger had finally caught up with them. Mia had reached the point of no return. The truth was ugly, and the people who had been pulling the strings had finally shown their hand. And now, Mia was about to face the ultimate choice. Would she fight to the end, or would she be swallowed by the darkness that had consumed everything she thought she knew? The answer was becoming clearer by the second, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as Mia stepped into the abandoned warehouse. The dim light flickered overhead, casting long, sharp shadows across the cracked concrete floor. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat growing louder, faster. She had followed the breadcrumbs, the mysterious phone calls, the hidden messages, the warnings from people she thought she could trust. Every piece of the puzzle had led her here, to this moment. She had uncovered the truth about her father, about the conspiracy that had ensnared him and now, had swallowed her whole. But there was one thing left she needed to know, one thing that had haunted her from the very start. Who was behind all of this? The silence of the warehouse pressed in on her as she moved cautiously through the space, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, lurking just beyond the reach of the flickering lights. The last thing she remembered was getting into the car with Daniel, the silence between them thick with unspoken truths. He had told her to trust him, but deep down, she knew he was hiding something more, something bigger than she was ready to face. And now, he was nowhere to be found. She hadn't seen him since they arrived here, and every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. A noise echoed from the far end of the warehouse. The sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate. It was too calm, too controlled for comfort. Mia froze, her breath catching in her throat as she turned toward the sound. She wasn't alone. Whoever was here had been expecting her. "Mia," a voice called out, low and smooth, the kind of voice that chilled you to the bone. It was familiar, but she couldn't place it at first. Then, a figure stepped into the light, a shadow that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally in the dim glow of the flickering lights. Mia's blood ran cold as the person's face became clear. It was Yanel. Her heart lurched in her chest, her mind racing to make sense of it. She had trusted Yanel. She had confided in her, believed every word, and now, standing before her in the shadows of this abandoned warehouse, Yanel's expression was something Mia hadn't expected to see. It wasn't the look of a friend, or even an ally. It was the face of someone who had been playing her all along. "I told you to stop, didn't I?" Yanel said, her voice dripping with something Mia couldn't quite define. The coldness in her tone was enough to make Mia's blood run even colder. "But you just couldn't leave it alone, could you? You had to keep digging. And now, look where we are. What are you talking about?" Mia's voice trembled, though she forced it to stay steady. "You were helping me. You told me you were on my side." Yanel stepped closer, a twisted smile curling at the edges of her lips. "Oh, Mia. I was helping you, but you were never meant to find the truth. The truth isn't something you can just uncover. It's something you have to live with, and it's something you can't ever escape from." Her eyes glittered with a dangerous spark. "But now that you've found it, now that you know everything, there's no going back. Mia's stomach twisted with confusion and rage. She had been so sure, so certain that Yanel had been her ally, her friend. But now, it felt like everything she had been told, everything she had believed, had been a lie. Yanel wasn't trying to protect her. She had been manipulating her from the start, guiding her to the very heart of this conspiracy, pushing her toward the answers that Mia now wished she could know. The air between them seemed to freeze, a heavy silence stretching as Mia's thoughts raced. She had known that this was bigger than she could handle alone, but now she realized just how much deeper the betrayal went. It wasn't just Daniel. It wasn't just the people from her father's past. It was Yanel, the person who had been with her every step of the way, who had stood by her when the walls seemed to close in. Yanel's laugh broke the silence, cutting through Mia's spiraling thoughts. Did you really think you could take them down? Did you really think you were strong enough to change anything? This isn't just about your father's death, Mia. This is about power. And power is something you can't fight. Not when you're this deep in. The words hit Mia like a punch to the gut, the weight of their meaning crashing over her. She had known something was off, but she had never expected it to go this far. And yet, here she was, standing face to face with someone who had orchestrated everything, someone who had set her on a path that now felt like a death sentence. What do you want from me? Mia demanded, her voice shaky but defiant. She refused to show fear, refused to let Yanel see how much the betrayal stung. Yanel's smile widened, a cruel glint in her eye. I want you to understand, Mia. I want you to realize that you can't win this. No one can. We've been watching you. We've been waiting for you to dig deep enough to find the truth. But now that you have, it's over. You've crossed a line you can't uncross. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. And you're not just a threat to me, Mia. You're a threat to everything we've built. Everything your father was part of. Mia's stomach dropped. This wasn't just a conspiracy of criminals. It was an empire, a hidden world built on decades of control, manipulation, and power. And now, she was caught in the middle of it, powerless, exposed. Why didn't you just kill me when you had the chance? Mia spat, anger rising like a wave. Why string me along? Yanel's eyes darkened, her voice lowering to a whisper. Because we wanted to see if you'd come to us on your own. We wanted to see if you were smart enough to figure it all out. And you are. You're smart enough to be dangerous. But now that you're here, Mia, there's nothing left for you. You're a part of this whether you like it or not. Mia's chest tightened as everything fell into place. The messages. The cryptic warnings. The way Daniel had acted. It wasn't just about protecting her. It was about keeping her close, keeping her in the dark just long enough to control the narrative, to manipulate her into doing exactly what they wanted. But she wasn't going down without a fight. A noise from behind them snapped Mia out of her thoughts. The warehouse doors slammed open, and a group of figures in black suits stepped into the dim light. The moment Mia saw their faces, recognition hit her like a punch. They were the same people who had been following her all along, the same people who had been in the shadows of her every move. Do you know who they are? Yanel asked, her voice cold. They've been watching you for months. They know everything about you, about your father. And now, they're here to finish what you started. Mia's pulse raced. This was it. The endgame. But then, as if on cue, everything exploded into chaos. A blinding light flooded the room, and the sound of heavy footsteps thundered across the floor. A figure appeared in the doorway, Daniel. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, a dozen more figures stepped into the light, each holding a weapon. The last thing Mia expected, the last thing anyone had seen coming, was that Daniel had never been the enemy. He had been playing his part all along. He wasn't just saving her. He had been setting everything up, orchestrating his own play. And now, with everyone in position, the truth was finally out. Daniel had been working undercover, infiltrating the very network Yanel was a part of. The final twist, the one no one had seen coming, was that the true enemy wasn't Yanel. It was the organization Mia had been fighting against all along. The world exploded into motion, and Mia realized, with a sickening twist in her gut, that the story wasn't over yet. The game was still being played, and the stakes were higher than ever. You said. The dust finally began to settle. The deafening noise of the struggle had faded, replaced by the eerie quiet that always seemed to follow a storm. MIA stood in the middle of the warehouse, her body still trembling, her mind racing to make sense of everything that had happened. The lights were now steady, the chaos of the past hours crystallizing into something almost unreal. She couldn't believe how close she had come to losing everything, to losing herself. But here she was, still standing, still breathing, and somehow, for the first time in what felt like forever, she was beginning to feel something like peace. Daniel was beside her, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were soft in a way they hadn't been before. He was different now, no longer the man who had kept so many secrets, no longer the one who had played a part in a game that had nearly destroyed her. The truth had finally come to light. Daniel wasn't the enemy. He had been undercover, working against the very organization that had killed her father and threatened her life. He had risked everything to protect her, even when it seemed like the world was crumbling around them. But it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about trust, something MIA had nearly lost entirely, but something she had just managed to reclaim, even if it was fragile, even if it was still laced with uncertainty. As the remaining figures in black suits were led away, their faces masked by the weight of their defeat, MIA found herself standing at the edge of the truth, staring into the void of everything that was still left unanswered. She had uncovered secrets, had unraveled a conspiracy that spanned years and touched the lives of more people than she had ever imagined. But now, with the dust clearing, with the immediate danger past, the hard truth was that there were no clear answers left. Yanel had disappeared. Just when MIA thought she understood everything, just when the pieces had finally fit together, Yanel had vanished, no trace, no explanation, just a cold emptiness left in her wake. It didn't make sense. Not everything about this was over. There were still pieces missing, still questions that lingered in the air like smoke. Who else had been involved? What other layers of this sprawling conspiracy had yet to be exposed? Even with her father's death avenged, MIA knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. But there was something else. Amidst the chaos, amidst the final confrontation, MIA had found herself at a crossroads. She wasn't just the daughter of a man who had been lost in this labyrinth of secrets. She had become something more. She had become a survivor. A warrior, even, in her own right. It wasn't about the blood that had been spilled, the lives that had been shattered, or the betrayal that had come so close to destroying her. It was about what came next. As she stood on the edge of this new world, she realized that this battle wasn't over, and it never would be. There would always be more mysteries, more shadows lurking just out of sight. But for now, MIA finally understood something crucial. She didn't have to face it alone. There were people who cared. People she could trust. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Daniel's voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice gentle but with an edge of uncertainty, as though he too was still processing the weight of everything that had happened. MIA nodded slowly, her gaze shifting to the horizon where the first hints of dawn were beginning to touch the sky. The night was over, but the journey ahead was still long. There were still questions to be answered, still people to find, and still more to uncover. But she wasn't afraid. "Not anymore. I'm ready," she said softly, the words feeling like a promise, a declaration of everything she had fought for. And for the first time, as she turned to face the unknown future, she didn't feel like she was running. She was moving forward, step by step, with the weight of the past behind her and the vast, uncertain future stretching out before her. But just as MIA and Daniel started to walk away, a low hum from her phone interrupted the moment. She hesitated, her stomach twisting with instinctive dread. It wasn't a message this time. It was a call. She glanced at Daniel, who looked just as apprehensive, but his expression hardened when he saw the number on the screen. MIA hesitated for a split second longer before answering. "MIA," a voice said, familiar but somehow cold. It was Yanel. "Where are you?" MIA asked, her voice tinged with confusion and fear. "I'm not the one you need to worry about, MIA," Yanel replied cryptically. "The real game is just beginning. They'll be coming for you soon. And this time, you won't see them coming." The call ended abruptly, leaving nothing but an empty silence in its wake. Mia's heart skipped a beat. The words echoed in her mind, a warning she couldn't ignore. Her gaze flicked back to Daniel, who looked just as troubled by the sudden turn of events. This wasn't the resolution she had hoped for. The threat wasn't gone. Yanel's warning hung over them like a storm cloud, and Mia realized, as the sun rose in the distance, that she was still caught in a web of deception that wasn't going to let her go. The mystery was far from over. And just as she thought she might have found some peace, Mia understood that this was only the beginning of something much larger, a shadow that would continue to follow her, no matter where she went. As she and Daniel stood there, the weight of everything crashing over her once again, Mia realized one last thing. No matter how far she ran, no matter how much she uncovered, the truth was something that never truly set you free. It only made you see the world in a different way, a way where nothing would ever feel the same again. And with that, Mia walked into the unknown future, unsure of what was ahead, but certain of one thing: the game was far from over, and she wasn't backing down. The camera zoomed out slowly, leaving Mia and Daniel standing on the edge of the horizon, shadows stretching long behind them, and the faintest hint of something darker still lingering in the air. The final twist had just set the stage for something bigger, something that would haunt Mia for the rest of her life. The story, it seemed, was only just beginning.